They never ask for praise, but the truth is, they're quietly starving for it. Avoidants have walls, they push, they hide, they retreat, but underneath, there are small truths they wish someone would notice. They live in a constant tension between wanting connection and fearing it, and most people never see the quiet battles they fight. Here are 4 compliments they secretly crave, but almost never hear. Use them wisely. The first is simple, yet powerful. I see your independence, and I respect it. Avoidants often pride themselves on self-sufficiency. They retreat because relying on others feels risky, and asking for help is like exposing a vulnerability they've worked years to protect. Recognizing their strength without making it a competition or a critique reaches deeper than any conventional praise. It's not about telling them they're perfect. It's about acknowledging the effort it takes to carry themselves with that level of independence, even when it makes them seem distant or cold. A soft, quiet acknowledgement here is far more meaningful than grand declaration. The second compliment they crave is, you don't have to fix everything to be enough. Avoidants often feel responsible for keeping the relationship or even life itself perfectly balanced. They withdraw not because they lack care, but because the weight of constant management and emotional labor scares them. Hearing that they are enough, even in their bare minimum moments, is a subtle relief they rarely admit they need. It reminds them that they don't have to perform, they don't have to control, and they don't have to hide behind walls to be worthy of connection. Third comes a compliment that addresses their hidden need for validation. Your presence matters even when you're quiet. Avoidants have a way of disappearing into silence, hiding in their own thoughts, or distancing themselves when intimacy feels overwhelming. Yet the truth is, even when they seem absent, their presence is noticed. Small gestures, a glance, a text, a brief moment of attention, these things are more meaningful than they let on. Recognizing this without overwhelming them with expectation validates them subtly and lets them know that connection doesn't always demand vulnerability on demand. Finally, the fourth compliment is one of trust. I trust you to show up in your own time. Avoidants crave freedom above all else. Pressure and expectation make them recoil. When you express genuine trust, you give them the rare gift of space and patience. This shows that you see them as whole, capable, and in control of their own pace. It reassures them that you care without forcing closeness, which is often what allows them to finally step forward on their own. Avoidants may never say it, and they might never tell you they needed these words. But these compliments linger in their quiet moments. Delivered with care, they reach the part of them that longs to be seen without feeling trapped. Timing, subtlety, and sincerity are everything. The right words, spoken softly, can break through walls more effectively than 1,000 conversations. I see your independence, and I respect it. It sounds simple, almost casual, but for an avoidant, it can be revolutionary. Avoidants pride themselves on self-sufficiency, often more than they openly admit. They've built walls not to push love away, but to protect themselves from vulnerability and potential disappointment. They distance themselves not because they don't care, but because relying on others feels risky. To acknowledge their strength without turning it into a debate over control or making them feel small is a delicate art, and when done correctly, it hits deeper than any conventional praise ever could. For avoidance, independence isn't just a trait, it's a shield. Every decision to pull back to manage their emotions alone and to maintain a sense of autonomy is tied to a need for safety. They often believe that leaning on someone else or showing any sign of weakness might tip the balance of control and expose them to hurt. That's why most people never truly see or validate this quiet strength. Saying, I see your independence and I respect it, is more than a compliment. It's recognition of an invisible effort, a validation that they don't have to justify themselves to be worthy. The way you deliver this matters immensely. Avoidants are sensitive to tone, timing, and intent. A loud or dramatic acknowledgement can feel performative or invasive. They respond to subtlety. Saying it quietly, perhaps in a moment when they're relaxed or after they've made a thoughtful choice on their own, is far more impactful. It communicates understanding without expectation. It acknowledges effort without creating pressure. It signals without words that you see who they truly are behind the walls they maintain. It's also crucial to understand that this compliment is not about encouraging dependency or control. It's about acceptance. Avoidants don't need to hear that someone wants them to lean on them constantly. or that they should change to fit a mold. They need to hear that their self-reliance is noticed and respected. That recognition is often the bridge to subtle openness, the key to moments of connection they might otherwise avoid. Over time, repeated, quiet acknowledgement of their autonomy can encourage them to share more of themselves, not because they are forced to, but because they feel truly seen and accepted. Interestingly, this type of compliment can also create a paradoxical closeness. Avoidants, who often fear emotional proximity, may gradually allow themselves to lean in, not out of obligation, but out of trust. They feel safe not because they are controlled or pressured, but because someone appreciates their independence. Without judgment, it validates their identity while simultaneously letting them know that connection is possible without compromising who they are. In essence, saying, I see your independence and I respect it is more than polite words. It's an acknowledgement of courage, a recognition of effort, and a subtle invitation for deeper connection. Delivered with sincerity and gentle timing, it can break through defenses quietly, leaving an impact far greater than any dramatic gesture could achieve. You don't have to fix everything to be enough. For an avoidant, these words carry a quiet, almost revolutionary weight. Avoidants often live under the illusion that to be worthy of love, they must constantly manage, control, or solve not just their own emotions, but the dynamics of the relationship itself. They build walls, pull away, and sometimes act aloof, not because they don't care, but because the pressure to maintain control is exhausting. Every interaction can feel like a puzzle they have to solve, a series of moves to keep balance and avoid being overwhelmed. To hear that they are enough, even in moments when they're giving the bare minimum, is like finally being allowed to exhale after holding their breath for too long. This compliment acknowledges something they rarely admit to themselves, that perfection isn't required for connection. Avoidants are often hyper-aware of flaws, their own and others. They may think that showing neediness, making mistakes, or admitting uncertainty is dangerous. By telling them, you don't have to fix everything to be enough, you're subtly giving them permission to exist as they are, without the weight of constant management or self-correction. It doesn't just soften walls, it validates their humanity, reminding them that love doesn't have to be earned through constant effort or performance. The delivery is just as important as the words themselves. Avoidants are hypersensitive to pressure and over-explanation. If this sentiment is overdone, repeated too often, or coupled with judgment, it can feel like manipulation rather than comfort. The key is simplicity, soft, sincere, and matter of fact. A quiet acknowledgement in the right moment when they're stressed, withdrawn, or trying too hard resonates far more than a dramatic speech. The subtlety signals trust. I see you, I understand you, and I accept you without demanding perfection. This compliment also has the power to transform their internal dialogue. Many avoidants live with a quiet, relentless self-criticism, a voice telling them that if they don't manage every detail perfectly, they are failing. Hearing someone else recognize that effort alone doesn't define their worth can slowly change how they relate to themselves. Over time, repeated gentle reminders like this can lower their defenses, not by breaking down walls, but by creating a safe space where vulnerability is allowed and mistakes don't feel catastrophic. Moreover, this acknowledgement fosters authentic connection. Avoidants often fear intimacy because it feels like obligation, a threat to their independence. By affirming that they are enough without having to fix or control everything, you show that closeness doesn't demand perfection. It invites them to lean in, to participate without fear, and to share their true selves, even in moments of quiet or minimal effort. In essence, saying you don't have to fix everything to be enough is more than a compliment. It's a gentle act of permission, a recognition of their humanity, and a quiet reassurance that love is not a task to be completed. Delivered sincerely, in simplicity, and without pressure, these words can ease their tension, soften their defenses, and create a connection deeper than any grand gesture could achieve. Your presence matters, even when you're quiet. At first glance, it may sound simple or even obvious. But for an avoidant, these words can touch a part of them that rarely feels seen. Avoidants have a tendency to hide in silence. They pull back when intimacy feels overwhelming, retreat when emotions run high, and convince themselves that absence is safer than connection. In their minds, withdrawing is often the only way to maintain control, protect themselves, and navigate relationships without being consumed by vulnerability. Yet, despite the walls they build and the distance they maintain, their presence, however small, subtle, or fleeting, matters more than they allow themselves to believe. Many people fail to notice the quiet contributions of avoidance. A fleeting text, a subtle gesture, a brief smile. They are small acts that go largely unrecognized, yet they carry weight. Avoidants often express care and attention indirectly. It's rarely loud and it's rarely obvious. They don't broadcast their affection or dedication. Instead, they weave it into moments that may seem minimal but are deeply intentional. When someone acknowledges these moments without exaggeration or dramatization, it validates them in a way that resonates far deeper than any grand declaration ever could. It communicates, I see you, I notice you, you are enough, even in your quiet presence. Delivering this compliment effectively requires nuance. Avoidants are highly sensitive to pressure, expectation, and performative gestures. A dramatic acknowledgement or over-the-top praise may feel uncomfortable, intrusive, or even manipulative. The key is subtlety. Focus on noticing small gestures rather than announcing sweeping declarations. For example, you might comment on a text they sent, the way they listened during a conversation, or the little efforts they made to present, even if they seemed minimal. These observations carry authenticity and signal respect for their autonomy, while still offering recognition. Acknowledging an avoidant's quiet presence also helps shift their internal narrative. Many avoidants struggle with self-doubt, believing that their effort, consistency, or attention is never enough. They often assume that only grand gestures will be valued, or that their subtle contributions are invisible. By explicitly recognizing their presence, you challenge this narrative. You show them that connection is not measured by intensity or volume, but by consistency, thoughtfulness, and the willingness to show up, even in small ways. This creates a sense of security without undermining their independence. Moreover, this acknowledgement can foster deeper connection. Avoidants often fear intimacy because it feels overwhelming, obligatory, or intrusive. By affirming that they are noticed and valued, even when they remain quiet, you provide a gentle reassurance closeness is possible without pressure, and being themselves is enough. Over time, repeated recognition of these subtle efforts can encourage them to participate more openly, gradually lowering their walls without forcing vulnerability. They begin to see that their presence, small, quiet, or understated, is meaningful and impactful. In essence, saying your presence matters, even when you're quiet, is more than a compliment. It is validation, reassurance, and subtle encouragement all rolled into one. It honors their boundaries, respects their autonomy, and recognizes the effort they often keep hidden, delivered thoughtfully. It reaches a part of the avoidant that longs for connection, yet fears it. It reminds them that love and recognition do not always have to be loud, dramatic, or performative. Sometimes the quietest acknowledgement carries the deepest meaning. I trust you to show up in your own time. For an avoidant, these words can feel like a rare gift, one that validates both their independence and their need for connection. Avoidants value freedom above almost everything else. Emotional closeness, when it feels forced or rushed, can trigger anxiety and push them further away. They often fear being controlled, cornered, or expected to respond before they're ready. Pressuring them, asking for constant reassurance, or demanding emotional availability usually backfires, creating more distance rather than closeness. By expressing trust in their timing, you give them the rare space to return on their own terms, without guilt, without judgment, and without the fear of being pushed into vulnerability before they're ready. Trust in the avoidant world is not casual, it is earned and carefully guarded. They often fear that showing up too early, too eagerly, or too fully will threaten their autonomy. They may retreat, even from those who care deeply, simply to protect themselves from losing control. When someone acknowledges that they can engage at their own pace, it communicates a profound respect for both their boundaries and their autonomy. It says, in essence, I see you, I understand your needs, I honor your timing, and I still care. This simple acknowledgement, when delivered sincerely, has the power to disarm anxiety and quietly invite connection. The delivery of this compliment is critical. Avoidants are sensitive to tone, repetition, and perceived pressure. Oh, if you say it too often or in a way that seems like a test or expectation, it can feel manipulative or frustrating. The key is sincerity and subtlety. Say it once meaningfully and let it stand. Let the words land naturally without trying to force an immediate response. Avoidants pick up on nuance and authenticity, and a single, well-placed reassurance can resonate far more deeply than repeated reminders or repeated urgings. This acknowledgement also works on a psychological level. Many avoidants wrestle with guilt or anxiety when they take time to process their feelings or withdraw. They may worry that their absence, silence, or delayed responses hurt others or damage relationships. By expressing trust, you remove some of that guilt. You show them that stepping back doesn't mean abandonment, and returning on their own terms doesn't mean rejection. It validates the idea that connection can exist without constant oversight, and that love does not demand performance or immediate compliance. Over time, this trust can transform the dynamic of the relationship. Avoidants are more likely to lean in and engage when they know their autonomy is respected. They begin to associate closeness with safety rather than obligation. They feel encouraged to show up, not because they are forced, but because they feel seen, understood, and accepted. This fosters deeper, more genuine intimacy where both partners feel comfortable and respected. In essence, saying, "I trust you to show up in your own time," is more than a compliment. It is a quiet act of respect, patience, and emotional intelligence. It honors boundaries while fostering connection. It reassures without pressure and invites without demand. For an avoidant, these words validate their independence and signal that closeness is possible on their own terms. Delivered with sincerity and patience, this simple phrase can unlock quiet trust, lower walls, and nurture a bond that is both safe and deeply meaningful. Avoidants may never say it, but these words linger in their quiet moments. Delivered with care, they reach the part of them that wants to be seen without losing themselves in the process. This is the delicate truth about avoidance. They rarely verbalize what they need, and they seldom ask for acknowledgement. Yet beneath the walls, the distance, and the carefully maintained independence, there exists a quiet longing, a part of them that wants recognition, validation, and understanding. The compliments we've discussed, the recognition of independence, the assurance that they are enough, the acknowledgement of their presence, and the trust in their timing aren't just words, they are subtle gestures that touch a place most people never reach, a space where avoidance meets vulnerability. Avoidants are masters of hiding emotions. They retreat when feelings get too intense. They distance themselves to maintain control, and they often convince themselves that showing neediness or dependence is a weakness. This makes it seem as if they don't care, as if they're indifferent, but the truth is far more nuanced. They notice, they feel, and they remember. Every quiet acknowledgement, every small compliment delivered with sincerity echoes in the spaces they guard most carefully. It doesn't demand anything from them. It doesn't force them to be more vulnerable than they're ready to be. Instead, it honors who they are, even in the parts they try to hide. The beauty of this approach is subtlety. Avoidants respond best to gentle, unobtrusive recognition rather than dramatic declarations. They absorb the meaning in quiet moments when words are delivered without expectation. It's in these moments that trust is built, walls soften, and connection becomes possible. Even if they never say thank you, even if they continue to retreat or maintain their boundaries, the impact is real. These words linger. They are like a quiet echo in a space that has long been reserved for self-protection. This is why timing and care are essential. Avoidants are highly sensitive to pressure, over-explanation, or repetition. They can sense when words are manipulative, performative, or designed to provoke a reaction. The power lies in authenticity. A single, sincere acknowledgement given thoughtfully carries far more weight than repeated reassurances. The goal is not to change them, to draw them out forcefully, or to dismantle their walls entirely. The goal is to reach the part of them that already wants connection, the part that is waiting to feel seen without compromising autonomy. Over time, these words create a ripple effect. They slowly shift the avoidance perception of intimacy, demonstrating that closeness does not require surrender, that love and recognition can coexist with independence, and that they can be accepted exactly as they are. This nurtures a deeper, more genuine form of connection, where both partners feel safe and respected. Avoidants may continue to retreat at times, but they begin to understand that returning, showing up, or opening up is not a threat. It is an option within a space of trust. In essence, the closing takeaway is this: the right words, delivered thoughtfully, linger in avoidance quiet moments. They don't need to be dramatic or frequent. They simply need to be authentic, subtle, and delivered with care. They remind the avoidant that they are seen, valued, and respected, all while preserving the autonomy they hold so dear. When we speak to them in this way, we reach the part of them that longs to be recognized, not with pressure, not with expectation, but with understanding. And in that quiet recognition, real connection is born.